Informal and Formal English. Hello everyone, this is Mohieddin, the teacher, and I'm going to talk to you today about modal verbs. So enjoy. Today's lesson is for the beginner students out there. If you are at an intermediate or advanced level, you can still find this lesson very useful, so stay tuned. Modal verbs are a certain type of verbs that are used to express modality, as in permission, suggestions, ability, request, order, obligations, or advice. So why do we use modal verbs? We use modal verbs to ask for permission, or to suggest something, to show ability to give an order or an advice, and so on. Now that you know why we use modal verbs, let us see examples of modal verbs. You might have used them before, but you didn't know they were called modal verbs. The modal verbs are can, could, may, might, would, will, must, shall, should, ought to. I will say them again. The modal verbs are can, could, may, might, will, would, must, shall, should, ought to. Let me give you some examples using modal verbs based on the purpose. If you want to express ability, you can use can or could. For example, they can speak English. Here, we are saying that they have the ability to speak English. Another example, Gabriel could play games very well, which means Gabriel was able to play games, or is able to play games. Now let's say you want to express probability. You can still use can, could, or must. Example, the results can't be right. I have memorized everything. Here, can't be expresses probability, not ability, as it did before. Another example, she is very sad, so she must have been crying. Here, must expresses probability as well. Let's move on to another purpose, like permission. Example, may I speak to Mr. Joe, please? Here, I am asking for permission using may. You can use modal verbs to express desire. For example, I would like to visit Germany soon. Here, I am wishing for something using would plus like to. So as you can see, we have short number of modal verbs, but they can be used for different purposes, depending on the situation or context. I will create a PDF list of modal verbs and link it to the video below so that you can have a better understanding of when and how to use them. Now, let us talk about being formal and informal. What do we mean by both terms? We use formal English when we talk to those who are older than us, or to those who have a higher authority than us, like your boss at work, your father at home, or even someone that you don't know outside, a stranger. To be formal is to talk in a sophisticated way. You kind of choose your words carefully. Now, we use informal English when we talk to those who are younger than us, like our brothers or sisters, and to our best friends or friends. Informal English is not as sophisticated as formal English. If you use slang, which is the language spoken outside in the streets, the language that is not mentioned in the dictionaries or in the academic books, then you are being informal. I don't advise learners of English to use music to learn new words or expressions, because music is written in an informal way, which will not help with your English vocabulary or formality. Now bear in mind that being informal does not mean being impolite. You still have to be polite when you talk to your friends or family members, but you just use different words than those used with your boss at work or elderly people. I will give you examples of both formal and informal language using modal verbs. If you are talking to your friends, you can be informal, which means you can use sentences like, can I sit down? Can I have this? Can I call you? So you use the modal verb can. If you are talking to your boss, you have to be formal, which means you can say sentences like, may I sit down? May I have this? May I call you? So you use the modal verb may. If you want to be polite, still formal, you can say, could I sit down? Could I have this? Could I call you? So you use the modal verb could. If you want to be very polite, still formal as well, you can say, would you mind if I sit down? Would you mind if I take this? Would you mind if I call you? So you use the modal verb would. So let me repeat that one more time. If you want to be informal, you say, can I sit down? If you want to be formal, you say, may I sit down? If you want to be polite, you say, could I sit down? If you want to be very polite, you say, would you mind if I sit down? You use can for informality, may for formality, could and would for politeness. Politeness means you are being formal as well. Now be careful. There are differences between normal verbs and modal verbs. In modal verbs, we do not use s for the third person singular, like he, she, and it. We don't say he cans, we say he can. Modal verbs also make questions by inversion. For example, he can leave becomes, can he leave? Also, if we use two verbs and the first one is a modal verb, you should know that modal verbs are not followed by to for other verbs. We say he can go. We don't say he can to go. This is the end of today's video. If you have found this lesson about modal verbs and using them in a formal and informal context useful, let me know in the comments below. If you want to check my videos on YouTube, check the link in the description. You can also check my website www.academialab.net. See you in the next video. Peace.